right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I am Ryan Moon, and I'm the Director of Public Policy here at the Greater Des Moines Partnership. And thank you for joining us today for the Public Policy Issue Forum on Placemaking. For those attendees online, we ask that you place any questions in the chat feature, and if we have enough time at the end, we'll get back to those. Those people in the audience today, we'll have hopefully some time at the end for some Q&A from you as well. As a reminder, when it comes to, let's go to the next slide, maybe. The partnership, we work with the Robert D. and Billy Ray Center and Drake University on the Show Some Respect campaign. With that in mind, I would like to take a moment to remind everyone the importance of civility. In today's event, advancing meaningful conversation requires respect. At the partnership, we urge all Iowans to engage in active listening and to be courteous as they express their opinions about the issue. Together, we can have tough conversations and in a respectful way, find common ground solutions. As an organization, the goal of these public policy issue forums is to educate a broad audience on policy topics so people can better understand as we communicate with our elected officials and other people in our communities. For 2023, we have 6 public policy issue forums scheduled to take place every other month on the third Thursday at noon. This is our 3rd issue forum, and we are excited to cover more important topics for the remainder of the year, including rural development, healthcare. We'll end the year with Iowa caucuses. We purposely put it at the end of the year, so we knew what was going on a little more, but each year, the Partnership's Government Policy Council develops a state and federal policy agenda that the policy team uses to advocate for the year. At both the state and federal level, the partnership supports ongoing funding for large-scale regional and transformation projects. We recognize that large investments in public-private partnership-driven projects further the goal to attract and retain talent while transforming Iowa's communities, main streets, and local economies. I'll now turn it over to our experts, but first I want to introduce our moderator, Tiffany Toszczek. Tiffany Toszczek is the incoming president and CEO at the Greater Des Moines Partnership. Through her various roles at the partnership, Tiffany has played a major part in working on placemaking projects in the Greater Des Moines region. Tiffany is passionate about projects that impact her community's quality of life. Tiffany, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks everybody for being here today. Very, very excited to have a conversation about placemaking, which is really critical to the future of our region. So we're going to start today with doing quick bio introductions. Sorry, I'm going to sit. Sally, I got you over and look at you. But thanks everybody for being here. So first, as we're jumping into the bios and intros of our fantastic panelists, just want to point out that placemaking continues to be one of the Greater Des Moines Partnership's visions for the future. Specifically, the next 5 years, we want to continue to lean into placemaking. It's identified by our board, our investors, our affiliate chambers, our members as core to the work that we have to do and get to do in the region. So that's why I'm really excited that the policy team is putting such a highlight and emphasis on this today with this great topic. So introducing to you, sorry for the formalities here of the bios. We work so closely together. This does feel a little formal, but in case you don't already know these wonderful women, to my left here we have Hannah Inman. She's the Great Outdoors Foundation and Icon Water Trails, multiple hats she's wearing right now as they're hunting for a new executive director for Icon Water Trails. She is a dynamic leader, and will underscore dynamic leader in the conservation space who excels in a cross-sector collaboration and dynamic placemaking facilitation. With more than a decade of experience in advocacy and philanthropy, Hannah has shepherded major regional initiatives, including Iowa by Trail, a comprehensive trail app, the Jester Park Nature Center, Polk County Water and Land Legacy Bonds, and the $30 million private capital campaign for Icon Water Trails, which hopefully you are all very familiar with by now. So Hannah. Next, we have Laura Kessel. And Laura Kessel is a senior partner at RDG Planning and Design. And I was fortunate enough to work very closely with Laura for almost 2 years on the Downtown DSM Future Forward Vision Plan and Action Plan. Laura combines her 17 years of experience in urban planning and landscape architecture to create places that work from the regional scale to the human scale. Central to Laura's planning philosophy is the belief that we create vivid, livable spaces by addressing the diverse needs of multiple audiences and finding creative solutions to seemingly competing priorities. Laura's award-winning master planning expertise has helped shape more than 30 neighborhoods and districts from Idaho to Pennsylvania and from Texas to Iowa. In Central Iowa, Laura was the project manager and the lead consultant for the team that we worked with on the Downtown DSM Future Forward Vision Plan and Action Plan, which is now moving into implementation, and was one of the lead planners for the Grays Station neighborhood in Des Moines. So welcome, Laura. Thanks for being here. Additionally, we have Deanna Triplett. Hi, welcome. So glad to have you here today. Deanna is the Senior Policy and Partnership Manager for the Iowa Economic Development Authority. In this role, Deanna built relationships with private and public business, community and legislative officials throughout the state. Deanna presents program and project advantages involving business, community development, infrastructure, and revitalization efforts. So welcome, Deanna. So thanks again all for joining us. We're going to start this out. It's going down the line here. One by one, if you get some opening remarks about this.
Yeah, so to us in the outdoor recreation and conservation community, placemaking is crucial. We feel that it adds the texture to our lives. You know, we move somewhere to work or to raise a family, or we're already there because our tie is there. But what placemaking does is create that area or those activities that allow us to enjoy those in-between moments, but also add value to our work and life balance. And so for us, it's a great catalyst for getting more people here and to improving the lives of the people that live here. And we feel that it just makes the community, it defines the personality.
So one of the reasons I'm excited to be here, I'm excited that you all are taking your lunch hour, those online in person. Placemaking to me often gets cast as a very physical effort, but to me, it's really about the ripple impact of every one of our little decisions. And that can be negative or positive as to how it relates to place and relates to things like public health, to ecology. And so I'm really excited to think about those ripple impacts that we all have an opportunity to influence.
And well, first and foremost, thank you for allowing me to be here. Second, I want to say how appreciative I am to be on an all-female panel. Love the Des Moines partnership to that. Putting on my economic development hat, you know, Director Durham is always saying, you know, economic development starts, it's all about taking care of your own backyard first and foremost. And yes, it's about being development ready. And yes, it's about making sure that the businesses in your community have the resources that they need. But really, more importantly, it's really about building communities where people want to live and work and play. And that's really where placemaking comes in. One of the things, you know, Iowa has a population, right? And so what do we need to attract people here? Placemaking is a key piece of that. During COVID, we did a shift. For those that do not know, that we do the marketing for the state of Iowa and tourism. And it seemed a little tone deaf to, you know, market the state when everybody's staying at home. So we pivoted and we did some research, and we asked people, like, what would you be willing to relocate? And they said, and that a very high percentage said, yes, we would. And we said, okay, well, what's it going to take to get you to relocate? And they said, we want affordability. We want to live bigger than where we currently are. Okay. They wanted economic viability. Well, what is that, right? Well, it's about being, if I move to your state, to your area, to your community, and it doesn't work out, do I have other opportunities that I can go after? And the third thing is, I Viability. And then they wanted to be connected, right? Because if they're going to work from home, they want broadband, being able to connect with friends and families. Okay? And the fourth thing that they wanted is outdoor rec and trails and attractions. So knowing all of that, I mean, that's why we think placemaking is so important. We need to attract those folks to live here for work, play.
Thank you. And interestingly, and I know we're going to be releasing this very soon, we wrapped up the 2023 Greater Des Moines Partnership and Community Workforce Trends and Occupancy Study. So this is a close look at our region's workforce, knowledge workforce. What do they want and need and value? And how are they going to do their best work? How are we going to keep them here? And what you've said and shared is in direct alignment with the feedback and the significant data that we've gathered. So that again will be coming out very shortly, but it's great to see that we are moving the needle and able to move the needle in those different ways. So each of you did define placemaking a little bit, which is helpful, but I think about even with the Capital Crossroads 3.0 regional vision plan and that steering committee, we've had a lot of conversations about placemaking and really defining what do we mean. It's the fabric of the place, it's the draw. If you could, in a few words, truly define what placemaking is for those policymakers, for the communities that maybe aren't as close to it as you all are, how would you define it? You've done it in stuff so far, but be even more specific if you can.
I can jump in, sure. There are 1,000 definitions out there, of course, but a couple of simple ones that I like is one, when we're looking at placemaking, we are setting the stage for positive memories. And we're thinking about where are we taking our out of town visitors, our recruits, and what is the story of the place that's telling them? Or if they happen to do their, if you have a recruit coming downtown, for example, and they do their own tour, what is that story that it's telling them? Is it a positive placemaking story or a negative placemaking story? So how do we set that stage?
I think that's great. Not only, the other thing I think, when you're looking for your own communities, it's what asset do you have in your community that you want to expand upon? Like the Icon Water Trails, perfect example. We have this lovely river. How can we now not only make that into an attraction, but a draw for not only our current residents, but to bring more folks here?
And just to build upon that, I mean, I think the next step of that is like what you said, the ripple effect. I mean, the paved trail system, I think, is a great example of what placemaking can do. It started organic grassroots, community by community, doing their section. But from that, we have a whole economy built around the trail system. Woodward and Madrid, their whole definition of who they are to themselves and to the rest of the state and those users is completely different before the hydro system went in. And so it's the defining piece of who you are and what you're.
Okay. Leave it to the planner to have a very set. Very helpful. Thank you, Laura. And that really is the exact, and again, I'll lean over to look at Sally. She has been in those meetings where we've had some pretty robust discussions about placemaking and defining what that is. And you provided a great and tangible example as you think about placemaking as a whole, just to dig in a little bit further. From a policy perspective, how placemaking strategically intersects and aligns with talent, economic development, community growth. Can you give any other examples, anything else come to mind from a placemaking perspective, that policy alignment?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at even the genesis of Icon Water Trails, I'll do like a really brief 30-second history. This concept of activating our downstream rivers has really been floating around central Iowa for about 3 decades. And it started as a white paper and later an op-ed piece by David Hurd of what defined a Golden City, which is probably one of the original placemaking modern visions that we saw. And it defined, Drake University and the Botanical Gardens and the World Food Prize. And then at the end, it was activating this gift of what we had of these two rivers that connect in the middle of our city. And they were a gift, but they weren't being utilized. That spurs off the principal river walk. So when the Des Moines area NPO started their engineering study in 2017, and then the partnership sort of took on of like, how are we going to implement this plan? We couldn't shelf this great vision. How did we make it happen? We brought, and the partnership actually did it, but brought a lot of people around the table. And in the end, the momentum started because the business community came out really strong. They saw water trails as a key driver of attracting and retaining the workforce that we need to keep Central Iowa vibrant, bright, and thriving. And so that really became our mantra and pushing this forward. And I don't think that without the business community's vision of seeing the placemaking of the water trails, most people saw that as a traditional outdoor recreation, environmental project. But through the vision of our business leaders, it really became this economic driver and the key to retention and workforce. And that's really the story of what we see with placemaking, is that it does intersect. I mean, another level of that is the Great Outdoors Foundation. The reason why we became involved in Icon Water Trails was because we saw it as an important way to leverage additional funds to help address water quality issues in the Midwest, and ultimately not just in Central Iowa, but up and down our watershed. And one of our first projects that we were able to do after starting the fundraising, the successful fundraising of Icon Water Trails, is we were able to do a partnership with Iowa Soybean and Agricultural Clean Water Alliance that leveraged an additional $25 million in private landowner permanent water quality practices up and down our watershed. And that's continuing now to this date. So placemaking gives us the ability to have stacked benefits, and it's a single vision, but there's multiple rewards. And that's what I think is sort of the magic of what Central Iowa is, and Iowa in general, is we're really good at these public-private partnerships. And really, if we're to get down to it, most of them are because of these placemaking initiatives.
In terms of intersection, it's really endless, frankly. And you think about stats like the #1 predictor of someone's life expectancy in the US is what zip code they were born into. And so when we think about opportunities to impact the place and the places we live throughout our communities, we start to look back on what are some of those policies that have driven things that contribute to those stats, and how can we transform that in places that are successful if they're more walkable and they're more vibrant and greater recreational opportunities. And I think, even a challenge everyone as we're thinking about this as we think about all the intersections of placemaking, think about some of your least favorite places and the least memorable places, the places you want to pass through as quickly as possible that you may not be interested in doing any economic development. And what are some of those policies that probably contributed to that aspect of a lack of place and meaning and memorability?
We see from the economic development world, when we're out trying to attract new businesses to come, or even businesses to expand in their current communities, as we've already talked about, workforce is a key issue for them. And so, the attraction, how do we maintain that, is such a key development. And so not only do we look at placemaking as a key component to that, because it's not just maybe that small attraction, but really what is it for the whole region? And Des Moines has done a phenomenal job with that. And we have to make it, obviously for policymakers, what's the return on investment? And really, if you can invest, that's the multiplier effect of placemaking. It's really hard to quantify it, because it's why you stay here, it's why you move here, it's why you engage with your community. It's so hard to quantify, but it's so important to maintaining what makes us great about Iowa.
So I have a few questions for each of our panelists individually. And in the meantime, just be thinking about what questions you would like to ask. So we will, after we work our way through a few more individualized questions, open it up to the room and those on Zoom that are watching and listening to invite you to ask your questions of these panelists too. So I'm going to start with Hannah. And Hannah, Icon Water Trails, it's nearly 90 sites. It covers a large area. You're dealing with a lot of people, businesses, residents, and municipalities. So a lot to navigate there, and no one intended that keeping people in the boat, rowing in the same direction, right? So would you be open to sharing with us just a little bit about how you navigated those waters and helping keep folks aligned, and also any sort of challenges that you had to navigate along the way from a policy perspective?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, there's lots of challenges, right? Anytime you're building something brand new, and a lot of these key initiatives are starting something from scratch or doing something that's never been done before. Just in the actual framework of Icon Water Trails, I mean, we started with nothing. It was a coalition of leaders within of leadership organizations. And we had to turn it very quickly within 2 years into its own freestanding organization. So what does the governance process, what does that look like? So we went through a very intentional governance process with lots of community input. And really in those beginning years, from every step, whether it was governance, it was fundraising, even down to our marketing, it required a very intentional outreach and getting a lot of input, and sometimes redoing the way that we traditionally do input, reaching outside of our normal circle. But really there was no legal or policy framework to make this happen. So a lot of what we had to do was work with our partners to either retrofit something that existed to make it work. So that was lots of legal time, lots of discussion, lots of contracts and reiterations of 2080s and different types of things. But I think as we start to grow as a region and we're moving from individual communities and starting to think of ourselves as a region, the policy will have to catch up. And Iowa and Central Iowa is not unique in that. We're seeing that all over the state and all out over the region. So it was a lot of work with all of our what ultimately became our member organizations. It was a lot of work with the private community, but we had to sit down and say, okay, there's one thing to build it. There's a second thing to continue the operations and to make this grow into what we all see as a vision and what this could be. And we need to plan for that long-term vision from the very beginning. And it may take 10 years, it may take 20 years. And knowing that it was okay to make a few mistakes along the way, because it allowed us to fast forward in our learning. And so really, when we talk to lawmakers and policymakers, we're really talking about help us create frameworks from a policy perspective, whether that's funding, whether that's legal, that gives a little bit of creativity and a little bit of leeway to be able to build those new things that we haven't been able to do. And I think the Destination Iowa grants were like a very great case study in how that happened. Yes, there's some framework around that, very much so. And yes, there are accountability measures, but really the Destination Iowa grants allowed each community to put together its vision, and then it helped fund that vision in a way that made sense and was not onerous on the communities.
And just for everyone's knowledge, Hannah, how many team members did you have at the beginning of this journey?
Well, at first it was no full-time team members, and it was each organization lent. So it was me and Tiffany and the director of Capital Crossroads and a few other people. And then it was just me, and then we finally hired someone. And now I think Monica Converse is in the area or in the audience, and she is a full-time project manager that we are so grateful that she's here. She has an engineering background as well as an economic development background, so it's been incredibly helpful and just the best perspective. And we're adding a new team member, so if anyone's interested or knows someone that's interested in being the next director of Icon Water Trails, please let us know, and thank you for that.
I bring that up because I think it's just such a great reminder and hopefully a little bit of inspiration as you are also thinking about potential placemaking projects or initiatives that you would like to see happen in our community and region, that you really can build something out of nothing. And it really comes down to having that vision, that idea, that there is collaborative support and buy-in around. And
Very much
so to bring it from a vision to where we are today is incredibly exciting.
Yes, and very much, I'm the spokesperson right now, but there is an army of people that could be here and talk about it. Someday we're gonna all write a book together, case study on it.
So as individuals, Hannah, are thinking about if they have ideas, projects they're already working on, projects they would like to see to life in our region or state. You shared some examples through Icon, but is there a lesson or a key finding through this process that you would say to yourself 5 years ago, Hannah, if you could do this time or do this differently?
Yeah, I think it's more of a mindset, right? I mean, I think anyone in this room probably has a little bit of like a type A personality. You like things to be perfect. You want things to be executed the way you envision them. And when you're building something that's never existed and you don't ultimately know what that's going to look like, that's an impossible expectation to have. And so, and oftentimes what I would term the messiness, you know, the misdirection of what I thought our plan was, ultimately added to a much better product in the end, and added new expertise and added new members to be in the boat with us. And so I would say welcome those challenges, right? Welcome those detours, because in the end, it will make a better product. And the reason why it's hard and the reason why it's messy is because no one's ever done it before. And so take a little bit of comfort in that as well. So I think it's more of like just holding, you know, having the tenacity to hold the ultimate vision and being okay with the messiness along the way. And it's going to be okay.
Great advice. Thanks, Hannah. Now we're going to switch our focus, talk a little bit about from a state level initiatives and support. Hannah, the state is a fantastic economic development partner, tourism partner. We appreciate you and your team and all you do. Can you share with us all just a little bit more about the Destination Iowa program that Hannah has already referenced today?
Yeah, absolutely. So from our research that we did, we knew that we wanted to bolster the quality of life for our communities, not only for the residents, but also to attract visitors and hopefully some long-term new people to move to Iowa. And in April 2022, Governor Reynolds announced the Destination Iowa program. That was federally funded initiative to provide grants to help communities move forward on transformational shovel-ready attractions. As many of you know, when you're dealing with federal dollars, and especially if they were ARPA dollars, there's things certain. So we really did need to do shovel-ready. And then last year, in 2023, the Iowa legislature created a state-funded Destination Iowa fund and appropriated $6.5 million to that. And I have to give a shout out to Senator Carrie Felker. For those of you who do not know who she is, she's from Dubuque. She has a very long tenure in tourism. She gets it. She really does understand the importance of this. And she wanted to utilize, you know, keep that momentum going from the initial Destination Iowa program. And this next program, the Destination Iowa state funded program, has kind of three components that they're looking, or project types that they're looking to. And it's economically significant projects that increase tourism opportunities, development enhancement of outdoor recreational opportunities, so those are those, and then projects that can contribute to quality of life in rural communities. We do know that there is a little bit of difference between urban and rural, and what works in urban doesn't always necessarily work in the rural communities, and so just understanding that there's a difference there. The other piece is that it is divided equally between the urban and rural communities. So there's $3.25 million for urban, $3.25 for rural. Rural is defined as 20,000.
And with that funding allocation that you mentioned, can you share a little bit more about what you know about the future of the program longer term?
Well, we're still working internally on like the guidelines for the project. We know that it's really important, we want to get it right. We want to take the lessons that we learned from the federally funded Destination Iowa program and make sure that we implement that in the new one. But I really think it's an opportunity to continue the momentum. I mean, it's the excitement. I mean, anytime that we made the grants announcements, those communities, fantastic. And if you weren't successful that time, it's an opportunity to look and rethink and say, we have another opportunity, we have another chance. How can what lessons did we learn? Is there maybe more people we need to bring into the boat? Maybe there's more people that we can look to for other regions and lessons learned. But really, what we want you to focus on is the uniqueness of your communities, because what works for you and may not be what works for another community.
Thank you. So sometimes we get the question between economic development and tourism. How much do we work together? How much do we not? And we really view it as today's tourists are tomorrow's talent. So it is critical that we continue to attract visitors to our region. And as Deanna mentioned, outdoor recreation is really high on that list for not only visitors, but also those that are looking to relocate and also those that are looking to build their network, their career, their family here already. So really appreciate that, that update. Laura, I'm going to transition to you and talk a little bit about the Downtown DSM Future Forward Vision Plan and Action Plan. For those that aren't aware, this was the most inclusive, community-driven plan that we have ever had for our downtown. We had nearly 8,000 individuals who weighed in on the future of our downtown through this process. And that's in part because of a very intentional, strategic outreach plan that we put together with Laura and her team to ensure that we were going to meet the community members where they were at and invite them to not only share their visions, their feedback, input, but also be a part of the process with implementation. And very pleased that the vision plan was not only approved by City Council in February, it was adopted as part of the City of Des Moines comprehensive plan, which is unusual for a vision plan to be adopted as part of a city's comprehensive plan. It really gives the plan more teeth. So Laura, I know that was something we spent a lot of time in navigating to ensure that it ended in a place that was inclusive and also had that more exclusive angle of being adopted as part of the comprehensive plan. Share with the group just a little bit more about the public-private partnerships of not only the vision plan planning process, but also as we're moving into and through implementation.
So in terms of the planning process, we had I believe it was 28-person steering committee, which represented all sorts of organizations and agencies. So the partnership, Bravo, the city, the county, business leaders were a part of that. And so it was really a broad coalition of people that really had the opportunity to, talking about policies, drive policies forward and drive initiatives forward. Moving into the future. We also included a Future Forward Council, which was a group of folks that are historically underrepresented in these processes and leaders throughout the various community aspects of that as well. So that really drove a lot of the conversation in terms of how can we create what became the vision statement of a downtown DSM is the destination for welcome surprises and inclusive opportunities, and really start to drive the placemaking. And I think one of the critical aspects that came out of both those groups, but also the other, 7,890 people, was that we heard time and again that downtown already is doing a phenomenal job of creating a place for people to come together as a community, to recreate, to engage in cultural activities, but people want to see increased investment in that, and they see downtown as really one of the key places to do that in the future for the whole region to enjoy moving forward.
So at this point, gonna pause and look to the audience, ask you to ask any questions that you have. Also those on Zoom, if we have any questions, drop into the chat or unmute and ask away.
Well, I have just a sort of framing question. We're talking a lot about placemaking. Do you want me to introduce myself or do you care?
Go for it.
I'm Sally Dix. I'm with Bravo Greater Des Moines. And we're talking a lot, and the framing for this conversation was large iconic projects. It sounds like that's what the partnership's priority is. Talk a little bit about how that flows down into placekeeping initiatives. I think that sometimes in our communities, we see a lot of attraction to the new shiny, but then there's sometimes a little less focus on the things that need maintenance or upkeep, or that there's an opportunity to revive or revitalize. So maybe that's an opportunity to talk about how placemaking connects to placekeeping in the strategies that you all are implementing.
I can start a little bit. I think part of the initial genesis for the icon governance piece was the placekeeping. That, and we saw this with the paved trails. I mean, in an ideal world, you could have icon layered with our central Iowa bike trails or paved trail system. But starting from so the paved trail started grassroots, mile by mile, and there really isn't a long-term maintenance plan with those. Like each community right now is taking care of their own with whatever standard that they have. So with Icon from the very beginning, we're gonna build this network, which we have 14, 15 by the end of the year, access points active now with over 80, when this is fully completed, was the business community, the state and the federal partners came in very big. I think we're just over 100 million right now of money raised to build it. But then on the back end with those governance agreements and with the governance of the Icon board, that was really to take care of ongoing maintenance. So that is the 2080, it's a formula that's built upon drainage districts, access points, navigation, and each community is contributing to that and maintaining not just their sites, but also on water maintenance, which had been really not addressed at this point, at the level that you need to recreate on. And so for us that have been part of outdoor recreation, and I'm sure you're very similar with this, is how do we plan for the ongoing maintenance to keep this a vibrant attraction for our region? And so that was addressed within our governance plan. So there is now a plan moving forward that everyone's contributing to, and that formula is 70-30, with 70% coming from municipalities and then the remainder coming from private donors. But it will take care of the maintenance of those trails, but it also has a reserve fund. And then with the business plan that is attached to activating the downtown sites, even though those are in downtown, the money that is raised from that, the net proceeds goes back to a long-term maintenance fund for those big pieces, or if we had a derecho or flooding, but also to offset costs in the future. And so that was something that was really, the founders felt really passionate about, but it was also lessons learned. So, and I will say that outdoor recreation as a whole is far behind other quality of life amenities to figuring out how to long-term take care of those to us for an acceptable thing of what we have, right? We have the best trail system. I think we have the best trail system, bar none, in the country. We have no dedicated funding plans for it. So that's an issue that we have to address.
I'd love to jump in here too in regards to the downtown plan. I think it was definitely a topic of conversations. We had a lot of great gems that we don't want to just, like you said, Sally, just go to the next shiny thing and forget about everything else. And I think a couple of things. One, we are extremely blessed with in the downtown area with Operation Downtown and all they do that many of us probably underappreciate. And until you go to another community and see walk down those streets and see the level of maintenance that we have come to just take for granted in many ways, as well as all the placemaking aspects that they do in addition to that. But I will say, much like Hannah was sharing, I do think public-private partnerships are going to become increasingly important for the really transformative projects. For those of you that have had a chance to go to the Omaha Jean Levy Mall renovation, really spectacular urban park that is going to require a lot of maintenance, and it was almost entirely privately funded to construct and also is going to be privately maintained moving forward. So it is a huge, it relies a lot on the generosity of our business community to really make our places shine sometimes. And that's just a reality that most cities are today facing.
Absolutely. From a public-private partnership, we also have several other grants that we run for the state, whether it's the historical tax credits, our downtown resource center grants, our Main Street and our Catalyst grants, also our community attraction grants as another opportunity for that kind of placekeeping that you were alluding to. And from Governor Reynolds' standpoint too, she also made historic investments in our communities, not only through the Destination Iowa, but also $430 million to develop new housing, whether that was downtown upper story housing or other community housing pieces that were needed. $500 million to expand the quality and affordability of childcare for our working families. We know that that's the key component also. And then nearly $684 million to build out broadband statewide. And then $100 million more, another key piece, $100 million for water infrastructure and water quality for our sewers and our water, and that other really key component that we sometimes nobody wants to fund. Unfortunately, right? It's not the shiny object, right?
Those are all great points. And Sally, I'll also just say from a partnership perspective, I know you're not directing the question to me, but do want to point out that while we aren't necessarily using the language, that word placekeeping as you just defined it is very much embedded to what we're doing from a placemaking perspective. But I think you bring up a good point that as we're messaging and thinking about how we're talking about and framing it, that maybe that placekeeping language should be included, because I think of not just the large scale placemaking projects that are certainly very, very impactful and meaningful, but I'm also thinking of the small pop-up projects that our team and others are working on in the community for $500 or $1,000 that's truly meaningful and impacting lives and creating that unique sense of place, in addition to it somewhere in between with that sustainability maintenance plan. And that's something that we spend a lot of time at the partnership talking about too, is the sustainability of programs, projects, and initiatives that we're starting. How do we make sure we're being mindful of that longer term, that it's not just a quick flash in the pan? A couple examples I'll lift up is skywalks. 4 miles of skywalks that's in the downtown vision plan, identified as a way to reimagine, lean into the future of downtown. And yet to completely overhaul the skywalks, it's going to require a lot of money. And we're working through that from a governance perspective to set it up so that there's more accountability, more teeth and structure to the skywalks as an organization overall, not us, the partnership to own that, but the Skywalk Association supporting them in that effort. But in the meantime, short term, we're partnering with the City of Des Moines, Operation Downtown, Bravo, and others to infuse some dollars, not huge dollars, but anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 to make truly meaningful impact from an aesthetics and safety perspective too in the skywalk. So we're really all across the board on that. And then Laura, I was hoping you could speak just a little bit more about the EMC Downtown Park as another great example of public-private partnership, but also set up with sustainability and maintenance in mind.
Yeah, and I don't know if I can speak to the maintenance part. I'll leave that to you. But I do think, as we were wrapping up the downtown plan, it was great to see the momentum of the EMC Park. And that was truly a partnership effort to make that happen, to take this little jewel of a corner that had lost a historic building and make it into something special for the community. And the downtown plan envisions that as really a key part along what we're calling the green ring. One of the visions of the downtown plan is to complete the loop of the green ring, which is a recreational corridor that will both hit on trails and hit on, key destinations that we think of, like Sculpture Park and the Capitol complex, but also stop along the way at places like EMC Park. And have that opportunity to have those small moments where you're having a game of ping pong with your coworkers or with your family, or be a spot for the residents living downtown to get outside. And what's great about that story is that, EMC was a part of that, the partnership was a part of that, Operation Downtown, the city and the county. And as this plan was taking shape, we realized the Skywalk's reimagined vision saw that the skywalk that was going right by the EMC park wanted to become this immersive linear park experience at the skywalk level. But we wanted it also to come down. And so you see the park below you, you want to be able to go down there or vice versa and have that opportunity to go between the two levels. And so these partners came together to make it happen so that you could have access to the skywalk in this future linear park experience down to this great pocket park. So I think it's a great example of how our partners in our community came together on multiple levels.
And for that park, EMC is handling the security component. But from a maintenance perspective, it's Des Moines Parks and Rec. So a lot of, again, another great example of collaboration to ensure that this new amenity is well cared for and again, open to all, but safe and secure. So one other just quick note on placemaking, the partnership, at least again, Laura said, placemaking can be defined a number of ways. The way we define it also includes small businesses. We have a number of programs and offerings to those small businesses because a small business is also unique and creates a different sense of place and impacts our economy certainly in a very positive way as we're helping those small businesses grow. But we do have, I believe, a couple questions online.
Yeah, so with the way that our Des Moines region is set up with suburbs, and a lot of those suburbs work individually on some of these placemaking projects, without tax-based sharing, how can we work together as a whole instead of individually? So how can we work as a whole entire region instead of individually cities working on one of these thinking projects?
I think the reason why I'm having problems answering that question is because I feel like we have a lot of ways in which we're doing that now. In many different levels, and those different levels interact. Icon is an example of how that happened with the MPO doing the engineering plan based upon what the MPO want to do, which is regional entity, with the partnership helping take the lead for the collaboration of Icon Water Trust or to create it into Icon Water Trails, which is again a regional entity, and then Icon in itself becoming a regional entity. And I think things like Capitol Crossroads and the downtown vision plan and things like that provide that vision that incorporates all of those people. So I would say that the buy-in from the entire community that we are one region that works together and there's a benefit in that is key to continuing that success. So I would say that in some ways we're already doing.
And I have one more question online, and this is at Anna here, is when you're talking about the destination Iowa, you mentioned those match requirements. Could you touch base on some of those match requirements?
There was match requirement, there's always going to be requiring skin in the game. It hasn't been, those details have yet to remain for the $6.5 million program as to what that will be, but there will always need to require some type of skin in the game.
Are there other questions from those in the room or online?
Has anybody embarked on any And thinking projects that are more intangible. Programs that would be more inviting to people that might want to move to Iowa, or even people who grew up in Iowa who would rather leave without them. Or you had mentioned about how where you grow up, where you're born, your zip code is a huge determiner. Has there been any efforts to deal with the factors that are at play in zip codes that are not a physical project?
Well, I'm not coming up with any non-physical pieces, but I will say one of the aspects of the downtown plan was also looking at not just what we would maybe traditionally think of the core of downtown, but also the neighborhoods that are surrounding downtown and integrate into downtown. And knowing that there are many challenges to affordable housing and housing rehabilitation and the quality of life. So the downtown plan did look at and propose some recommendations about how we could improve programs and policies surrounding housing rehabilitation and affordability for the residents that live there today. And that is, I mean, I think that is about placemaking. It's about pride of place in your community and as well as some public realm improvements that you're thinking about the streets, the sidewalks and experience of, you know, how do you walk your children to school? And what's that experience and what is the crossing of roads in a safe way? So those are still all somewhat physical, but they're beyond what I would think is kind of the shiny transformative projects that often get associated with placemaking.
I think that's a really good example because it's an example of keeping people in place. And I mean, people are a large part of what makes a place a place. Really, it's those impressions and memories that you talked about earlier that frequently come from people, not just attractions or things to do or businesses to visit.
Absolutely. This is also somewhat of a physical, tangible example, but one that comes to mind for me, which I think is a great question, is also about childcare and access to childcare, because that has such a big impact on whether or not our families, our moms and dads can continue to flourish, and those kids can have opportunity too. So that's another example where the state provided funding to childcare centers. And I don't know, Deanna, if you would provide just a little bit of overview of that program and how helpful that's.
Yeah, that was through our workforce development, which is not us, but another partner or sister organization within the state government. And they provided, it was I don't remember all the details, but communities could go and apply to build the infrastructure of the daycare centers. Another initiative that we have is the Iowa Women's Community Foundation. We partnered with an organization so that they go out and meet with businesses and find out what is your needs for childcare. And the governor had the childcare task force, and part of that was it's not only you have to shift the cost for the childcare centers first and foremost, right? And how can we do that? So first, some businesses are looking at buying slots for the entire year. So it's like you have an even steady income for that childcare center so that they can, still meet their needs. I was also looking at the state system and the fact that they only paid when the child was there, so if you had a sick child and they didn't pay, well, that's a problem for the business, right? So looking at the whole continuum on how you can reevaluate that business model. The other thing is an opportunity to take away some of those standard costs for the businesses, for the childcare center. So can we look at accounting for everyone? Can we look at the HR and kind of like the back room stuff that happens, allow them to focus on childcare and providing the best daycare, and then having other experts that deal with that and kind of, reducing the cost overall for all of them. So that was a key component that she did.
Hey, Are there any other last questions? If not, I will just give a quick plug for our new placemaking task force that the partnership has launched. And this is a regional task force led by Jerica Marshall, who I believe is still in the room. Hi, Jerica, give it away. So Jerica is on team partnership and leading this initiative because we really strongly believe that there is opportunity for additional collaborations across the region as it relates to even those small pop-up placemaking types of opportunities. So if you're interested in serving on that task force and getting more involved, please let Jerica know. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Ryan. Drew.
Well, thank you to Tiffany and our panel for joining us today. And thank you to everyone who attended in person and online. I do have a couple items I want to quickly wrap us up with. The first is the Greater Des Moines Partnership and the affiliate chambers. We'll be doing a chamber night to the Iowa Cubs on Tuesday, June 20th, from 4:30 to 6:30. Tickets are just $3. Okay, so $3. So get your friends, your family, your colleagues, and come join us. There'll be a pregame tailgate party. It'll take place in the southwest corner of the north parking lot. So food will be provided on a first come, first served basis before the 6:30 game. This again is our third issue forum of the year, and we invite you to join us on our next issue forum on rural development, which will be on Thursday, August 17th at noon. And just a last reminder, to ensure you're receiving everything public policy related, please subscribe to our newsletter that goes out weekly. And with that, thank you everyone for being here today.